I'll talk about my first experience with LSD. I was 16. I went to a party. Buddy of mine was like, "You want to try LSD?" At that time, I was like, smoking a little bit of cannabis, having a couple of beers, being a teenager. And I was like, "All right, what can that be like?" It's got to be the same thing. Well, a couple hours later, I found myself in the gully of that church I attended as a kid, staring up into a full moon, wondering who was behind everything.
Hey there, welcome to Microdose U. I am Dr. Dave, and I have a guest today, Ryan Estes, and I've got to tell you something. You're going to really enjoy my little talk with him. We talked about so many things about life in general, but what came into it was psychedelics, religion, business, you name it, we covered it. So I'm going to really encourage you to listen all the way to the end because just when you think it's getting really good, it's going to get better and better. And then I'm going to come back on the other side and I'll say goodbye to you and tell you a few other things we've got going. So enjoy this interview. Hey Ryan, welcome to the show. So great to have you here. I know you are a quite a high-powered business person, entrepreneur, CEO of kitcaster.com and host of AI for Founders podcast. Did I get that right?
You did, yeah. And David, it's wonderful to be here. I really appreciate it. I am now head of growth for Kitcaster. Our company was acquired in April, and so now I stayed on, and so I'm head of growth. We were acquired by a great agency called MoBurst. And then yeah, the podcast AI for Founders. I started that in January largely because I had big questions around AI, and so I wanted to reach out to experts and talk to them about it. And it's really taken off. The podcast and newsletter is killing it, and I'm just having so much fun doing it.
It's all about fun. It's all about having the fun. And I'm so glad you're doing this good stuff. But it looks like, you're a pretty high powered guy. You got a lot going on. So let me start with this, Ryan. Tell me just a little bit about you, about your life growing up. What were you like? Tell me what's going on with you.
You bet. And I'll maybe just add context as it might be relevant for this conversation. So I'm a Denver kid. I was raised in Denver. Flash forward to now, I got two kids in high school. My oldest daughter's heading off to college. Been married 20 years. Had a former life as a musician. Kind of pivoted from that into entrepreneurship largely because, local music isn't necessarily the fulcrum of commerce. But growing up in Denver, I think I was probably a normal kid, played baseball, loved football, did that kind of thing. I think one thing that was interesting to me is I was always kind of spiritually curious. I was raised in a Protestant Christian background. My parents are very faithful. But to me, I always felt like something was lacking a little bit. I kind of describe it as like strip mall Christianity. And I don't mean that by any disrespect because I think it's those kind of churches are largely based on the grace of God and things like that are really beautiful. But I always like kind of hungered for something more. And so, early on as a kid, I got into like Taoism and really got into Buddhism and started meditating and doing things like that. And then, in high school, one thing led to another. And I found my way into psychedelics, which completely kind of radically changed my little kid brain at that point. From there, I went and had the great pleasure to be introduced to the Lakota traditional spiritual path and did that for many, many years, ceremony with them. Kind of progressed through my life, got married, didn't have like a faith, kind of felt embittered, I would say, with the world a little bit. Kind of fell into a spiritual darkness of, you know, materialism and I would say agnosticism. And then kind of was reintroduced to a spiritual path through psychedelics in different capacities. So that's kind of a thread that I think has gone through is kind of this like seeking, as far as, our own mindscapes and also maybe these other celestial realms that we have a lot of questions for.
So it's really common. I talk to people that I hear it all the time. Hey, I did a lot of psychedelics back when I was younger in high school, college, but then I haven't done them for decades. And now here I am. I want to go ahead and see if I can start microdosing or using psychedelics for mental health. With you, it sounds like you did them early on, but was it a continuous thing, or was there a time where you stopped and then you reintroduced into your life at some point?
Yeah, I don't think I ever stopped. I just kind of, and as we get into this too, I want to make sure people understand that your audience is probably pretty sophisticated, but these are dangerous substances in the best way. To me, they're kind of like sacraments, and I just want to say that as we talk about it, that I have a lot of reverence that has grown over the years for these kind of like medicines. And also the legality. I mean, I live in Denver, Colorado, where the legality here is very liberal. The plant medicines are wide open here. So I definitely don't want to encourage anybody to do anything outside their comfort zone, or certainly don't break any laws. But with that caveat aside, I'm happy to kind of talk about it. So yeah, I think that like, I'll talk about my first experience with LSD. I was 16. I went to a party. Buddy of mine was like, "You want to try LSD?" At that time, I was like, smoking a little bit of cannabis, having a couple of beers, being a teenager. And I was like, "All right, what can that be like?" It's got to be the same thing. Well, a couple hours later, I found myself in the gully of that church I attended as a kid, staring up into a full moon, wondering who was behind everything. Um, and I realized there that there wasn't the depth of my faith didn't match the depth of the conscious experience I was having at that time. So after that, I think in high school I dabbled a lot with LSD. It seemed to be around largely because I think the Dead was touring back then. Um, and then I found that like 14 to 15 hours of the acid trip was a bit too much for me. And so like, mushrooms kind of became a go-to. And I think probably for many years it was just like the cap and a stem at a concert, lively the mood, like feel good about it. I wasn't big into like going into the heroic depths. I think, LSD probably really kind of scared me more than anything else, or the fear of a bad trip or a challenging trip or things like that. And then, I got older and was like, I'm a serious person here. What am I doing? I'm playing with these plant medicines. It's time to have smoke cigars and drink whiskey. Isn't that's what men do, you know? So it kind of progressed into that. And then I was invited to an ayahuasca ceremony for the first time, and actually sat with that for 3 days. And I know this is a microdose show, so I'm much more versed in the macrodose. And having that experience probably 10 years ago, it felt like someone chiseled an inch of black crust off my heart. And it was just the most extraordinary, life-changing experience. Some good, some bad, but kind of put me on the path that I'm at now, where I don't want to say I'm an evangelist for psychedelics. Rather, psychedelics are emerging into the culture in a major way right now. And I think there's a certain amount of responsibility that folks have who work with these medicines to speak frankly and candidly about their experiences, because integration, as you well know, is a big part of kind of the psychedelic experience, and usually the one that goes kind of ignored the most. So that's kind of where I find myself now.
So I want to hear a little bit about the ayahuasca ceremony. You said it was 3 days. So was it like three different ayahuasca trips, one on each day? And also, I'd like to know, like, how did that really change your life? And could that be done? Yeah, this is definitely a microdosing podcast. However, we talk about anything. It's totally fine. I mean, your LSD trips back when you were 16, that's totally fine. But I'm just curious to know how the ayahuasca do you think changed your life? And since I've got so many people that are watching and listening that are, really only interested in microdosing and don't really want to go on like a long extended ayahuasca type ceremonial type thing, could it be done, whatever happened to you, could it be done through microdosing mushrooms as well?
I don't think it can. I don't think it can. Largely the dosage. is so overwhelming. For one, you're pretty much incapacitated. You're laying down. At least I was for the many times in the beginning. Now I like to hold a sitting posture as much as I can, but you're fairly incapacitated. At every retreat, there's a bucket right next to you with some toilet paper because you're going to be purging and puking, and it's not glamorous, and it's certainly not microdose. So, and that's a completely different thing. Microdosing is fantastic because it's therapeutic in a different way, and the subtle energies I think are equally important. The big light show of an ayahuasca retreat, and you're correct. 3 days is three different sessions back to back to back. And what's maybe separates an ayahuasca retreat is it's very formulaic. You're sitting in a certain way. There's certain rituals. There's certain songs. There's certain things that are burning. To be honest, it's very weird, but it's somehow it all makes sense when you're doing it. And for me, I think it was the subtle ways, perhaps, that you get the benefits you get from microdose are the most lasting and the most important. If I'm talking about my own integration, people have visions of relatives. You have visions of like some kind of unbelievable fractal intelligence that seems to love you in some kind of way. There is a lot going on with ayahuasca. And part of my integration experience was trying to find a place to ground that or see what that means. And to me, like I saw it in religion, in all these religious stories, particularly in like the final enlightenment of the Buddha when he's sitting under the Bodhi tree and he has these unbelievable visions of Shiva torturing him and beautiful dancing girls all over him and all of these kind of temptations. And the way he finally achieves enlightenment is he just allows them to be. He finds acceptance and meta for these things. He's not trying to change it. He's not bedazzled by it. And to me, that gave me a lot of inspiration to how to kind of formally utilize some of these medicines because you can become enraptured. It's very common with the light show, and a lot of times people will do radically change their life, after a ceremony or an experience like that, which can be for the good, but it's also can be damaging for your life. You can make mistakes. So as was kind of like looking at like, let's say, Jesus fasting in the desert and the last enlightenment of the Buddha, it became fascinating to me to see then what are the Buddhists in America, like what's their path? And almost unanimously, all of the famous American Buddhists all started taking LSD in the 60s. You know, they started by finding that there's a there, and then they reversed engineered to kind of figure out a way to induce some of these states without the big light show, because the light show does possess some potential uh, challenges, we'll say. And also because you got to live your life. You can't live your life on a ayahuasca trip. You know what I mean? You still got a social security number. You still got mouths to feed. You still got a mortgage. You got to carry on. So, everybody from like Jack Cornfield, Sharon Salzberg, Joseph Goldstein, all these guys, they all started out with a psychedelic experience first and then found kind of a way to navigate and maybe even map the terrain of their mind with these contemplative techniques. So that's been a huge inspiration for me as a way to have a place to put some of those really big, really intense experiences.
And you said this was 10 years ago. I believe you said 10 years ago where you did the ayahuasca ceremony. So let's go back to the 10-year point now. And what was going on in your life? Were you a musician still then, or were you becoming an entrepreneur? Were you a capitalist? I guess my question is, what was going on in your life that made you say, I really want to go to this ayahuasca thing?
Yeah, I think I was called to it. I was doing good. I hate to say I was a musician. Boy, that's like a dagger. That's probably true. I still play a bit.
What do
But
you
yeah, I
play?
had I
What,
had young children, I
what,
was married, I had a business. I was a capitalist, 100%, and um, just always looking. I'm kind of like, hey, can I go to that kind of guy? So if I hear somebody talking, they're doing something cool, I'm like, hey, can I get involved in that? Can I do that? I want to do that. So I'm always kind of like attaching on to folks and like seeing if I can include myself. And this is just one of those things. It's like, I'd heard about it forever, largely because, I got big into like the beats in high school. And I remember there was a great story of William Burroughs, who went to Central America to drink yahe, is what they called it in the book. And he comes back and Kerouac is like, dude, what are you doing? And he had built like this nature igloo in his backyard with sticks and mud and stuff. And he would just go sitting there. And it was always like the weirdest thing. Like, why in the world would you do that until you drink yahe? And then you're like, oh, that seems like the best thing to do. And he was going down there for treatment for heroin addiction, which I think there's pretty good evidence that it's a good therapeutic for some of the opiates. Ibogaine, particularly, I haven't ever tried iboga, but there is that application. Um, so I'm trying to tie it back, but I forgot the original part of the question.
no, no. The question was, and we'll go on from there because I think you answered quite a bit of it. But where were you in your life
Oh,
when 10?
sure.
But I also want to know. So 10 years ago, were you married at that point, and you just said to your wife and family, "Hey, see you all later. I'm going on ayahuasca. I'm going to an ayahuasca ceremony." What was going on?
Yeah, and oddly, that's probably not that uncommon for me. Having done a lot of ceremonies with the Lakota, which their modalities are very, very different, um, or kind of whatever I'm up to, they're just like, okay, see you Tuesday. But yeah, that was basically it. I went in there open, looking for the experience and really wasn't prepared for all it actually was. But I think that it called to me and it was like, okay, this is for you. You're ready for this. I think around that time too, what's up 10 years ago, I'm what, like 35, 36, something like that. So I think at that time, um, you're probably in a good position for this kind of medicine. Now, I'm not passing judgment, but if you look at like the Eleusinian mysteries, you had to be a certain age. I think you had to be 40 before you could partake. There was different kind of benchmarks you had. And I think some of those are so that you have kind of maybe some responsibilities to keep you grounded because a lot of people will come out of their first experience, with kind of a messianic complex, for better or for worse. It's very common in Buddhism. They talk about kind of the stages of like awakening as jhanas, and the temptation of that first jhana really is this kind of messianic complex where you're like, oh my God, everybody's got to go do this. You have to come check this out. You dress in robes now. Now you're you got a newsletter and you're getting people to subscribe. It's very, very common, not only with ayahuasca, but religious experiences in general, because there is kind of like there is a wonderful feeling associated with it, and you want to share it naturally. So
Did
yeah,
you
so
have? Was this more local, or did you have to travel somewhere? Did you have to go out of the country? I don't remember if you said that yet or not.
it was local. It was local, and that's what prevented me from doing it before, because I've been reading about ayahuasca since the 90s. And it's like, okay, Peru's the spot, but you can go to Brazil, you can go to Colombia, you can go to Mexico. There's places you can go, but I'm scared of big bugs and snakes. So like going to the jungle, I'm like, oh man, that's out of my wheelhouse. But when I found that I could have the experience here in Colorado, I was like, sign me up.
So you've mentioned Buddhism a couple times. Or do you consider yourself a Buddhist now?
I do. Yeah, I do. Largely because Buddhism is something you do. There's nothing really to believe. And that's the definition of Buddhism as it comes from the Dalai Lama. So I do consider myself a Buddhist. Now, I for a while I was really seeking community in those organizations. So what that looked like for me is, locally I went to like all the different spots. Shambhala comes out of Boulder, and I went and talked to them. The Denver Zen Center has like a very strong lineage, and I went and talked to them. I went to and talked to a couple of ashrams in Fort Collins, and some of this was for study, but most of it was I kind of came to the conclusion that like I'm a competent man with a pickup truck and people could use that. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily like I need to sit at the knees of some guru. You know what I'm saying? It's more like I feel like the religious component of life was something I was missing. And so I went to look for them. And I kind of told them my situation. Hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm pulling from a lot of different spiritual traditions. I feel like I could be a resource. What do you think I should do? And all of them said, you should come here. And I was like, oh, I appreciate that. The other thing I did is I went on a bunch of podcasts with a bunch of different kind of Buddhist teachers and Buddhist podcasters. And one thing that kind of turned me off is all of them kind of told me I wasn't Buddhist enough to be Buddhist. And they had this kind of gatekeeping mentality that I really found super unsavory. So I ended up being like, you know what? I don't think that these organizations are necessarily right for me. I think I'll be a tourist in them so I can pick up what I can. But ultimately, I think, religiously, really doesn't matter the sect or schism. I think just the neighborhood church is probably a good place for a competent man for a pickup truck. So I think ultimately I just moved, but like ultimately that's where I'm going to go. I'm like, hey, what are you guys praying about? That's cool, but on Sunday, if you need help moving, I got you. Because I think that's an important part of community. So that's a long way around to say, yes, I consider myself a Buddhist, but many Buddhists I've spoken to do not consider me a Buddhist for whatever that's worth.
It's funny when you first mentioned the pickup truck. I thought you were using that more in like a figurative sense, but you literally have a pickup truck and you're willing to help people with that.
That's right, but don't publish that part because people are gonna be calling me when they need help moving, and, and I'll call my
Yeah,
buddy and send him over.
yeah, I'll be first in line. But okay, so here's a question though. As a Buddhist, let's face it, you're also a business person, entrepreneur. I'm assuming a capitalist, and I have nothing against that at all whatsoever. But is there any cognitive dissonance between being like a Buddhist and then also being an entrepreneur capitalist? Do they intersect at all, or what's the story with that?
I think they're complementary. I mean, I am an unabashed capitalist. The creative power of money is incredible, and I love money. I'm not in love with money, but I love money. Um,
Well,
but there
stop for
are
a second. Stop for a second. I'm just curious. Tell us what that means. You're not in love with money, but you love money. What does that mean?
maybe that's just me attempting to hold on to some kind of sanity. Maybe I am, I would say, but it's not the be all end all. So in Buddhism, they have these kind of pillars of right livelihood, which is to say that there's certain things that you just can't make money on, and that's weapons, intoxicants, things that hurt people. So, it's a pretty loose frame there. It's like, hey, don't hurt anybody, and then otherwise, go about your business. You know what I mean? So I don't see them in conflict. And oftentimes, I think a lot of people misconceptions about Buddhism is that like you have to live on a mountaintop and then you're enlightened and then that's how your life goes. Whereas like anything else, it's a wave. I think the techniques, the things that you actually do with Buddhism are the most important. That's kind of the chapel. So as I was kind of touring all these different modalities, two really stuck out to me. I love the Dzogchen stuff, or the Diamond Sutra. It's very advanced. It's probably as Buddhism evolved, it's the most evolved state. So their techniques that they have are very, very pleasant, very, very potent. and their architecture is unbelievable. It's like, the giant gold Buddhas and the big stupas, and like there's gold chalices and red velvet and big brass horns. It's like it's a production, and I like that. On the other side, you have Zen, and in Denver we have a wonderful studio, the Denver Zen Center, and you go in there and it has that kind of feudalistic Japanese aesthetic. It's very sparse, and then in one little corner there's a little stone Buddha, you know, and then in the meditations you just face the wall. And I like that too. And ultimately, that kind of experience is what's best for me. Like very pared down, very modest, for lack of a better word, was kind of the modality that worked for me. So, again, man, as I'm going, I'm forgetting the root of the question or where we were going with
You know,
that.
it doesn't even matter, Ryan. We're going in any direction we want, and it's all totally fine. But I do have a question. If you never, if psychedelics never entered your life, where do you think you would be now? What do you think you would be doing? What type of person would Ryan Estes be without psychedelics?
Oh man, it's hard to say. Unfortunately, because I started so young as a kid and had such big experiences and questioning experiences, I'd probably be like an engineer, with season tickets to the Broncos. I think ultimately, I'd probably be exactly the same. I mean, I think some of these the other trap, or maybe kind of that awakening experience is there's a desire, I think, to escape yourself in some way. Or maybe I won't speak for other people, but it could be true for seekers. It could be true for people that are actually trying to find these experiences. Like, there's something intangibly unpleasant about me, and I want to change it. And you can find these like big experiences that might give you the illusion that that's possible, but ultimately, I think we're pretty baked in. And that experience also comes from having kids, where you can see that, like, boy, their personalities were kind of set when they're like 3 months old, and it kind of unravels from there. So, I think one thing, that a benefit that psychedelics have given me is it's allowed me to be patient and kind and open. I'm a very driving, competitive person naturally, and the fear for me is always growing old, bitter, cynical, uh, sad, like if that kind of trajectory and destination to me is unpalatable. So I think with these medicines, it helps you along the way to increase your sensitivity and allow yourself to be vulnerable, to new ideas, to new experiences, to new emotions, so that you can keep your heart open, for lack of a better term.
Was there some type of, and going back when you were younger, because you've been using psychedelics for quite some time, but was there some type of belief that you had like pre-psychedelics about life that psychedelics like is like totally changed, totally dismantled?
Yeah, totally. Well, because I think growing up as a kid, and you learn the stories of the Bible. And so the idea was that, like, somewhere out there was a bearded man with a white robe and a cloud that was waiting for me for a harp, and there's some kind of angels, and there's a house made of gold. And honestly, there might be that, you know what I mean? And then I think what psychedelics did to me when I was a kid is shattered all of that. It was like, oh, all of that is a story, an illusion, and had me re-examine what I actually believe. There's a saying that's like, 90% of people are the religion of their father. Like that's just how it is. It's like we are Muslim, we are Christian. You're like, I am Christian, I am Catholic, I am these things. It becomes part of your identity, which is beautiful. There's a lot of amazing things about that. And so I really see religion as a technology that has like profoundly improved the lives of humanity. Also some downsides. But I think a lot more so culturally, it gives people some kind of foundation. But then there's people within that actually have this interest in, okay, what do I actually believe? What is actually going on inside me and outside here? Like, what is it? And these are kind of like the divine sects that exist in every single religious faith, I mean, you can see it if you walk into a mosque and you're like, what are they doing here? You know what I mean? You can see the fractal imagery of all the architecture. The same thing in a cathedral. The same thing in every single tradition. You always have kind of this spiritual tradition that exists within it, which I think were built and founded by people like me, so that they were to say, like, for the folks that come because they get a meal, for the folks that come because they like the music, that's all fantastic. But there's also a place for you here, and they point to it with this extraordinary architecture and artwork.
But what do you think is really going on? If I had to say to you, "Hey Ryan, so what is everything? Are we in a simulation? Are we in some kind of weird like parallel universe? Like what is everything? What would be your simplest thing? I know we could probably talk a long time. What's the simplest answer? What do you believe?
It's so great. I love that we get to have these conversations. I appreciate it, David. How often do you get to ask somebody, so what do you think this is, man? What is all this?
Right. Exactly. Because I've got my thoughts. I mean, I think there's a very good chance we're in some type of simulation, but I want
Yeah,
to see what you think.
I totally agree. I think we definitely could be a simulation, but it's kind of like the thing, like if everything is everything, then everything's also nothing. So it's like if it is a simulation, I mean, that's just what we are, you know? So it kind of puts you in the same position, but it does seem like it probably is. From what I surmise, it appears that, the Earth realm does seem to be some kind of station point where you can decide to ascend into something else. And there's various different realms that I've been familiarized with it that might be something a little bit like that. Or you can stay here, you know. Now, I think there's been a hierarchy produced, particularly in spiritual and religious traditions, where they see at the human realm as being less than the next thing. You talk about people that have near death experiences and they see the white light and they go into it and it's like you're going to heaven, you're going to somewhere better. And that's always been kind of sold to us, you know. The Lakotas call it the happy hunting ground. It's the next place that's better, that looks down on this place. Christianity is very point blank about it, that like this is the devil's realm. Like the point is to escape this. But I don't share that. I think that like if you're talking about eternity, getting to experience a football game with a beer in your lap and a hot dog possibly could be the best thing that the universe has created so far. So you better enjoy it. Now, I have mixed feelings about that too, because in Buddhism, they have what is called as a bodhisattva. And bodhisattvas take a vow that says, I will not ascend to the next plane until all sentient humans have ascended as well. And so they commit themselves to being reincarnated and helping people achieve higher levels. Now, I kind of feel like if reincarnation is real, maybe I got trapped 1,000 years ago by some mean monk with a stick that made me take that vow, and really what I wanted to do was ascend. But dang it, 1,000 years ago, I took the vow, and now I'm stuck here coming back over and over trying to get people to ascend. Then what do you do? You know? Um, I'm kind of kidding, but maybe not, I think that ultimately, I think this is some kind of proving ground. And if my life is any example, it's also a place that you can dance. It's also a place that you can really enjoy it. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to make the decision whether to come or go when the lights turn off, maybe you lived your life in the right way.
I love this, and you taught me something too. I don't know if you're familiar with there's a musical group named Sparks, and they've got a song on one of their older albums, and I never realized what it meant, but the song is called Happy Hunting Ground, and you just taught me
Nice.
what that's all about. That's amazing.
Cool. Yeah, and I want to be clear too that I speak candidly and kind of across the board about religions. In no way do I want to disrespect anybody's faith in any whatsoever
Yeah.
way. I'm fascinated and a student by all religions, and I also know how people are very passionate about it. And if I talk about it casually, it really, I mean no disrespect.
Oh, we get that. I totally get that from your body language and from what you're and your communications. No, no, that's not even
Okay.
not even a thought. Don't worry about that, Ryan. But I would like to do a total 180 now because we have a lot of people watching and listening today, listening to you, watching you, and some of these people are really hurting out there. They're hurting. They're confused. They're not sure if their lives are even going in the right direction. Maybe they have not tried psychedelics. Maybe they have dabbled a little bit. But what would you say to somebody out there that's just not really sure if they're in the right place, if they're not going in that direction that maybe in their heart they feel they should be going in? What do you say to them? What should they be doing?
Oh man, I don't know if I'd give advice. I would listen, and empathize. I've been in those situations. I've been in tough situations, and it's hard. I have always taken massive action. If I feel like something's wrong, and the way that I know that I'm feeling like something is wrong, which is it gets harder to understand, particularly as you become more adept in meditation, you can start gaslighting yourself, that like everything's fine. I meditated for 20 minutes today. I'm good. You're not. And the way it shows up for me is I'll feel like there's some kind of grand conspiracy of the whole world is working against me. So I ask myself the question is like, okay, is it the whole world, Ryan, or is it you? Are you tripping? Are you having a hard time? And then I'm like, okay, something's happening here. So for me, I take massive action, and usually that starts with like diet and exercise. I mean, we're just getting back to the basis of it, but a lot of times like the low-hanging fruit is where most of the healing happens. You getting enough sleep? You drinking enough water? Are you eating the right foods? Are you making sure you sweat every day? That's going to take care of like a good percent, of the problems with me. I know a lot. That's the challenging thing I think about depression, is that like it makes the willpower to take some of those steps very, very difficult. So, if I was to give advice, I would say start with a physical practice, whether that's yoga, whether that's CrossFit, someone you have to be accountable to, but also in a team group setting where you can turn your brain off and just go with the herd. It's like let the herd take you through the exercise and then begin there. I think dealing with kind of like if there's an acute issue, it's very important to take care of that first. And then if microdose can become like a way to create some therapy to keep you on the right path, I think it's fantastic with that. I mean, not that it's my opinion, but I think there's plenty of clinical trials that have kind of proven that. So yeah, I mean, if people are listening to this and they're really hurting, I feel for you, and I could tell you that I get there every once in a while. I'm on a long, long spiritual path. It still happens to me. It's not like it goes away. It's not like there's any kind of like pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So, if you're hurting, hang in there, and know that it's other people. It's occurring to them as well. There's a wonderful technique too that's been really transformative to me called meta meditation. Are you familiar with this?
I don't think I am, Ryan.
I'll explain it real quick if that's all right. So the idea of meta, METTA, it's loving kindness. So what you do is you figure out a mantra that works for you. So for me, it's may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be free from suffering, may I be free from mental anxiety, may I feel safe, may I pass my time in life at ease. And so with that, what you do is you repeat that to yourself 4 times for yourself. And then you repeat it 4 times for someone you love. And then you repeat it for 4 times for somebody you're neutral with, like maybe the coffee shop guy that you know. And then if you get into the deep waters, you start repeating that for the people you're in direct conflict with. May you be happy, may you be healthy, and so on. And so, you find kind of this little mantra of sharing loving kindness, and it's extraordinary. It really is helpful for me, largely because I've come to the conclusion that 99% of my mental world is completely useless. And if I'm reminded to, I will go to that meditation as much as I possibly can. And it's very important that you start with yourself with this particular technique because usually that's the hardest one. It's easy to share it for your kids, you know what I mean? Of course you love them, of course you want them to be happy, but a lot of people really struggle with, may I be happy? Maybe they feel unworthy. So by practicing that, as a practice, you get better at it and it starts to sink in. So that's, I think if we're talking about situation where people are like really hurting, they're dealing with depression. For me, this has been a great tool to kind of like soften the duration and the severity.
Really appreciate that on so many levels. First of all, I am definitely going to look into that. Sounds really interesting, Ryan. And not only that, but I really appreciate your transparency, admitting that everything you're doing to make your life better with Buddhism and but you still sometimes get into some periods of time that maybe you just don't feel like feel the love, or you feel it down a little bit. So I really appreciate that. So it's really never ending. There's never a point where we are just perfect and and the work is
Never.
finished. The work's finished and we're done, and that doesn't happen.
It doesn't. It never ends. And there's there's a great kind of saying in Buddhism too. It's like the first arrow puts you down, the second arrow is fatal. That's paraphrasing. But what that means is like if you feel bad, you feel depressed, that's the first arrow, is feeling bad. Um, but feeling bad about feeling bad is fatal. Like it's okay that you feel bad. It's okay that you're going through hard times, hard things happen. It's okay that you're sad, you know? There's things you can do to reduce the duration and severity, but also it's going to happen. But if you're like, gosh darn it, I've been going to church for 10 years, like why am I not feeling better? And I've been watching The Sopranos with my kids, and it's funny because Paulie goes to the priest because Paulie's having horrible nightmares because, he's a terrible murderer. And so clearly he's psychically damaged, and he goes to the priest and he's like, "Hey, I paid for the new pews and I paid for the kids camp. Why am I having nightmares still?" You know, but to him, it's like, "Hey, I did what I was supposed to do with the church. Why is this still happening to me?" So it's just kind of a testament to that it's like it's going to be hard, but you don't have to feel bad about it being hard. You can deal with it on its own terms.
Ryan, I really appreciate you being here. Appreciate your honesty and transparency. And I'll give you some, if you want to say some final words, and if there's a way that people, if they're more interested in following you or finding out a little bit more about you, you can mention how that can take place as well. So go ahead. I'll give you the last words there.
Sure. If people want to kind of hear what I'm up to on subjects completely unrelated to this, mostly I'm writing and talking about revenue operations, startup culture, raising money, and building with AI. But my website for the podcast is aiforfounders.co. I don't do much talking because it's an interview show, so I'm interviewing them. But that's a good way to kind of reach out and see what I'm doing.
Are you interviewing just AI, like AI is talking to you?
We're getting close to that. I did have people ask if it's AI that I'm AI, so I always try and leave in errors and stuff to to the intros where I'm just like, I'm not AI yet, but probably that will happen at some
So
point.
wait a minute. I'm not 100% sure. Is there a possibility in this past, I don't know, 40 minutes or so that I've actually been talking to AI?
It's
Is that a
it's
possibility?
possible. It seems like that we're at that possibility. Now you can tell I'm not because AI, all the characters are so attractive, and I got a catcher's mitt face, so you can tell for now that it's still actually real.
That's funny that you said that, because I'm looking at a guy that I think is like a really cool looking guy. It's almost like I want to be like Ryan. So it's funny that you said that.
Oh, David, this has been awesome. We're Black T-shirt gang. I like it.
I know. I
Yeah.
noticed that at the beginning too, and I want to also say that any this is on YouTube and audio, Spotify, Apple, all that. But the people that are just listening, they are not seeing what you look like, nor are they seeing your beautiful cat there. Just tell us a little bit about what's your cat's name. It's he or she is beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my cat's name is Bird.
Bird.
And she is very aloof and will never give me attention. You know, when I go to bed, I want to snuggle. No, she's not going to do that. If I'm on the couch watching the game, I want to snuggle. No, she's not doing that. She will only approach me when I'm on a conversation like this. And that's if you see like in the video, I'm trying to kind of push her away and she's biting my hand and she's demanding to come onto my lap. It's just, that's my cat.
No, I was welcoming Bird. I was hoping Bird would. I was
She,
hoping this should be in the frame a little bit more. 'Cause I love cats.
yeah,
So it was pretty
me
cool to
too.
see
I'm a cat
it.
guy.
And you can tell somebody. You can tell about somebody if they're a cat person. So that it just makes a lot of sense that you are a cat person, Ryan.
You too, for that matter. I appreciate that.
Well, hey, listen, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to give you an invitation to come back anytime because I think we could talk forever. Definitely have you back and we'll continue this conversation. But until then, thank you so much for being here on Microdose. You really appreciate you sharing your story. Hey, I really hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time speaking with Ryan, and if you liked it, make sure you comment. Let me know if you'd like to see him back again. Let me know if there's something you'd like to have him talk about more, because I'd love to have him back if at all possible. I also want to share with you that if you like what you're hearing here or seeing, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If there's somebody in your life that you think just could use some of this help, some of this information, some of this knowledge, feel free to pass it on. We're really trying to help people all over the world just feel better about their lives every single day. Remember, I've got a brand new episode that comes out every single Wednesday. And be sure to check the show notes as well as my website, microdoseu.com. It's microdose with the letter U on the end of it. .com. Make sure you check out that Patreon channel that we have. It's growing and it's something that I never really imagined what it would turn into, but we've got a great group of people that we hang with on Patreon, and we do a live meeting every couple weeks and a different topic every time. And we really haven't done any Q&A over the past couple episodes. I usually like to do those at the end, but the last couple episodes have been pretty long, so I haven't done those. So I'm going to make this up to you. I promise you, next episode, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to do all of your questions and answers. It's going to be a Q&A episode. We're going to get caught up there. And if you're interested in any type of one-on-one coaching, definitely provide that. So make sure you check it all out. It's in the show notes. It is on the website. Remember, nothing here is medical advice. And make sure if you do use psychedelics, make sure you use them in an area where it is legal or decriminalized. I'm Dr. Dave. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. I do love you, and sign form.